Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I am Joe Rockey here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, we'd recently been discussing a thought that's kind of been consuming me a little bit. And I've been seeing it play out more and more that I'm starting to look for it, which kind of makes me think it's one of these hidden truths that are always there. And that is that most professions, most skills in general, are not that far out of someone else's reach. What I mean by this is that I talked to a couple of different marketing companies that do some specific things that sounds really scary and intense for someone who's never been this. For instance, how do you get ranked on the first page of Google without paying Google? That sounds really scary and intense. Like I need to go to school for a long time. I need to become a master programmer. I have no idea how I'm going to do that. But I talked to about how they actually do it. They break down their steps and goes, really anyone could do this. But the difference is that we do this practice every single day. And that when we do it, it's going to take us 12 minutes. When you do it, it's going to take you 8 hours. So you're capable of doing this, but it's going to be weird, awkward, and time consuming. And I bring this up much as I brought up the example of the Pope from a couple of episodes ago, in that many people have this feeling of becoming a saint is so strange or foreign that there's no way I'd be able to do it. There's no way I'd be able to get onto the first page of Google without paying. It's impossible. So how can we get over this barrier, being like, what? Yeah, we can. In my case, I got to talk to the owner of the business. He told me exactly what to do and how to do it. That being said, I kind of look at the realistic part and go, I'd rather have the whole day back and just pay you for your 12 minutes. But in our own holiness, we can't really outsource it like that, can we? So what I want to have today's conversation of how can we make ourselves regularly practiced so we can take what will be a foreign, scary experience that might take all day and eventually get us to a place down the road of that type of efficiency or proficiency, whatever the right word is, so that the path of becoming a saint does become so regular. I can do this without even thinking. It does only take 12 minutes. Again, they're not exactly perfect analogies, I understand, but I think that it gets across what I'm trying to articulate here.
Yeah, you're drawing attention to the fact that becoming an expert is you're drawing attention to some of the fruits that come from expertise in any field. Ultimately, that we can do things a lot more quickly as we learn the ropes, we understand the pathways, we know how to set the things up. It becomes a regular part of us. And how does that happen as we learn Christ? And it's a way to describe holiness is learning Christ. Learn still has a bit too much of a mental limitation to it. That is to say, limited to ideas or something like that. But we talk about learning to play the piano, for example. It's something that we have to teach our bodies and our minds, and so learning to embody holiness, learning to embody Christ, learning to live out Christ in our lives would be a way that we're talking about this. And then it is, the perfections of virtue are expressed in ease, promptitude, and joy. So when I have the virtue of chastity, it's not a matter of sweating my way through a hard decision about sexual engagement. The virtue of chastity is exercised in ease, promptitude, and joy. It comes easily, it happens immediately, and it's joyful to make the right decision. So how do we move to a place that we are away from sweating and struggling to more spontaneous responsivity? And through expertise. We grow in it by doing it. And habits, developing habits, building habits in the spiritual life works like building habits anywhere else, in the sense that we grow through repetition, we grow through failure, we grow through learning from our mistakes, we grow through having somebody to do it with us. We develop the experience by watching others and by receiving advice from others. And so all of that kind of training, mentoring, mutual support, doing it in relationship, all of that matters. And then we start to develop the intuition. So all of this is more than just a human reality. It is a supernatural reality. The seeds of grace are at work in us through baptism, and God's life is becoming more alive in us. In a way, we're letting him become more alive in us, more than we are sort of developing skills like playing the piano. It's not a matter of forcing our muscles to act in a certain way. It's really allowing Christ's life to move in us more freely. But all of that being said, what steadily happens is his thoughts become my thoughts. His logic becomes my logic. That what I spontaneously realize, I start to make connections. I start to have intuitions. I start to have a knack for charity. I start to have a knack for goodness. I start to perceive reality with deeper insight and penetration. And all of that begins to happen as I'm living out my faith over time. So you're right, you can't outsource that. What you can outsource is who you learn from. So if the blind lead the blind, they will fall into a pit. So we can decide who we learn from, and if we're ready to grow, as you know, we hear truth and it fits. I hope that our podcast is helpful for our listeners, and I hope that they hear in our conversation something that they didn't know, but as soon as they hear it, they go, "Oh yeah, I get that. I couldn't have put that into words. I wasn't 100% confident about that, but I hear it, I know it, I trust it, I'll live it." And that's a continual feedback loop, a positive feedback loop that I try it. A lot of times we don't have a capacity. Well, maybe something sounds good. To go back to the Google example, it's like, well, you can get on the front page of Google by doing whatever, a couple of steps, and go, "Oh, that's interesting. That sounds right." And then you say, "Well, you try it." Oh, and then the person actually goes in, they go, "This is really complicated. How do you do this again?" And now when they hear you the second time, they're going to listen with more attention and more insight. And that's how the Christian life goes too. You have to try it. If you're not trying it, then it doesn't matter how much you hear and how much you like it and how much it makes sense. Herod also listened to John the Baptist and he liked listening to him, but he wasn't trying it. And so it wasn't really landing. It just sounds like nice words. Well, wouldn't it be nice if people were like that? That's great. But when I actually start trying it, then when I listen, then it fills in the gaps. Oh, I see. I am doing that. I'm not doing that. I need to adjust that practice a little bit. Oh, I see. I tried this and I failed, and then I gave up and I turned back, and I need to try again. And even if I fail, I reach out for help, and then I can make progress and I can continue on my way. So as we have some lived experience, then those things can fit into place a little bit better. So if I were to sum up the things I just said, it grows in us. We develop expertise in the Christian life, the logic of living like Christ, and the spontaneous capacity to do that in virtue by doing it, practicing it, and being in it. And nobody can do that for us. But we can learn along the way from those who have the expertise. And if we are learning as we are trying, that's going to be the most effective way to keep learning. And then if we can actually be in relationship with those persons, not just listening to them over a podcast, but being with people who know us and that we know that we can share that journey with, both sharing what we're experiencing and also receiving guidance and encouragement on how to move forward, then those are all very helpful ways to grow in holiness.
And that makes a whole lot of sense. So, Father, what I'm going to do here is kind of hit upon the try it part, and then I'm going to ask you to tease out a second part. So, you gave the example of, well, I paid attention more after I tried it. And particularly the way our human brains work is we're going to pay attention more to the part that we messed up. Most people, when they're going to learn something, especially when it's a skill like this, it's going to be working upon either A, the part you enjoy the most and keep trying that to learn deeper into it. That's your passion. Or B, overcome the part that was the hurdle and the frustration. So the parts where you're just kind of in the middle, you're not super passionate about it's working, that ends up being the steps we normally forget and mess up. But it also draws attention to, I listen more to the stuff that I messed up, which requires in the first place having to messed up, having to tried it and stumbled. So now I learn how to do better. I remember watching, that's how my son learned how to walk. Don't take your foot this high, take it at this angle so you step correctly and don't stutter it and drag yourself down to the ground. It's natural in all human reactions here. And one of the other elements I'm looking to tease out from what you said there was you have to allow God in. You have to allow the process to happen. And I know there's some people out there that's going to hear then take that basically as the equivalent of, well, that's telling me to relax. How do you relax? You can't just tell someone, boom, start relaxing. You know what I mean? You have to go through the process of doing it. And to me, I think that those are very similar comparisons. So I'd like to tease that out for a minute because you gave such great instructions. I want to tease this part out because that's probably going to be the spot where people do fail and need to pay attention a little more.
Yeah, I think as we start to learn ourselves, and it's probably one of the things that holds us up in the process is I don't want to fail. I want to just do it right the first time. It's embarrassing to fail. It's hard to fail. But as we know, nothing of value is possible to do the first time perfectly. We have to keep growing in it, and to figure out where the hard spots are for us. None of us is without virtue. All of us has some virtue, but there are other places that we need to grow in our lives, and so we won't really discover that until we do a little stress test, until we kick the tires a bit, until we road test it, and then we start to discover where things are not working as well as they should, and then we can focus a little bit more attention on that. But yeah, we have to be willing to run into the hurdles, to fall short of our goal. We have to be willing to strive for something high enough that we fall short of it and that we actually fail on the way. And then we have to have the humility and the trust to be able to share that with somebody. Usually we're not going to be able to perfect all this on our own, because ultimately what we're aiming at perfecting is love, and love can't be perfected on your own. There's no such thing as just loving on your own. Love always has has a relationship as an object and a vehicle for. So we need to be in relationship with people that we trust and that can help us along the way, and that requires a lot of vulnerability. So we can't really live these things out without those vulnerable relationships. And that's where usually we also need some layering of those. We need somebody who's absolutely trustworthy that we can reveal everything with. And then we need other people who are good friends, who can be there in our mistakes, who can help to lift us up when we fall, who can bear a certain amount of our pain with us, but maybe not everything. We wouldn't turn to them for everything. And then we need people who are more acquaintances, business, I don't want to say partners, but like other people contractors, I suppose, or people that we engage with at a little bit greater distance, according to some rules of engagement that are agreed upon, but that are not expecting I'm going to reveal my whole heart or share all of my failures or be totally vulnerable. And then we have total strangers in our life that I'm not necessarily going to share anything with, but will be people that I can be charitable towards and that I can be open to growing in relationship with, starting from zero. So we have all of those cascading relationships that we're working with, and then we're, then we try it out, and we have that feedback loop, and we need to, be able to acknowledge where we really are, and be honest with ourselves, and be honest with those closest confidants in particular, and then live that out in a place that not everybody's going to be happy with us, but as we continue to grow and improve, we're going to be more and more effective in living the Christian life.
And I want to hit upon what you just said there at the end, that there's never going to be a moment when everyone's happy with us. And on the surface, that might seem like, well, then we're failing with something. Our job is, part of Christians is to, sow peace, create a world that is heaven on earth, which is going to be unity and everyone being happy in heaven. Right? So we look at this and we know that that's the ultimate goal. And a lot of us can get discouraged about, like, why do I want to put myself out there if all I'm going to do is create problems? Because that is the perception, is if I go out and I try to bring up Jesus or Christ in a conversation, it's going to create this awkward feeling in the group or the culture, because I don't really have a relationship with these people yet. Do I really want to start with, almost like a political hot button issue, essentially? I bring this up distinctly knowing that Jesus himself was not liked by everyone. It's a big part of the Gospels. How did he deal with the fact that there were people that did not like him? Ultimately, being disciplined to the point when he allowed them to kill him. So I wanted to point that out, because I think this is another spot where we can get hung up and held back from doing what this initial conversation was, which is trying to become an expert on being a saint. How do we overcome that fear of not being able, the fear of not fitting in, by potentially, saying something that we believe is right, that we know is right from the teachings of the faith, but because I don't have a deep enough relationship with everyone where I feel I will be warmly received, and therefore probably only in an echo chamber, how do I be able to reach out to people that, again, I don't know if it's going to work or not? I might fall flat on my face. I might get canceled. How do I overcome this?
Yeah, it's a little bit delicate, and it's going to depend a bit on, on the one hand, you don't want to be so brazen that, like, well, forget these people. I'll just say whatever I want and they can do whatever they're going to do. Well, that's not very helpful. It's also not going to be, I'm terrified and I need to know that everybody will accept me before I do anything. So finding a middle ground, which is engaging with each person. And we do want to, learning moves from the known to the unknown. So I may need to get to a place where I say, listen, I'm not going to engage in corrupt business practices. That may need to be that needs to be the bottom line. That may need to be what I actually say, but I may be able to negotiate with somebody a little bit to explore, like, well, this part is good, that part is not good. What are you doing over here? That sounds corrupt to me. How do you understand that as not being corrupt? Oh, well, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. Okay. So anyway, we can negotiate these things a little bit, but at the end of the day, we need to have enough of a principle that we can draw a line, that we can have a boundary, that we can say, I go this far and I don't go any farther. And I'm going to die on that hill. So that's pretty unusual. This is not a daily occurrence by any means. These are more extraordinary circumstances. And by growing in confidence in ourselves and our identity, by becoming more solid in what I believe, what I stand for, and what I am not going to tolerate, that's the reinforcement on a daily basis, that when I finally hit one of those situations, that it's like, oh, we're really in two different places. And we're not just going to reconcile by saying nice things or nodding and smiling. there's a real conflict here, and I'm not going to give into that. Then, if we practice that, it becomes a part of us in such a way that I would really be violating myself to give in on a certain principle or a certain point. That's the place that we want to grow into.
And so much greatness in this episode about how to go through, and a lot of step-by-step actions you gave your father. I'm so glad for it. And that's going to be the topic of the next conversation, of how to basically become less lonely. So we thank you all for listening. If you haven't done yet, please click subscribe and leave a review. We greatly thank you for being with us, and we will be with you again next week.